Hello and welcome to Communication Conflict Resolution. Of course, I'm Mike Betker, your host. This is our last and final recording for this semester and for this class. Thank you so much for your kind attention throughout the semester. It's been a blast. So we're going to wrap up here and talk about Module 7, Apologies, Reconciliation, and Forgiveness. And we're going to pivot from ourselves looking inwardly, and we're going to look more broadly this week. And we're going to talk about the corporate apology. So by extension, then, of course, there is a handout or a selection that I've picked out for you guys to read entitled The Corporate Apology. So take a look at that. And, of course, along with that, you want to watch this lecture video, which will be a very short one this time. I also want to take you through the final exam study guide, which opens May 13th and closes on the 20th. So you have an ocean of time there to get that done. It is 60 minutes and 42 questions. And it's worth 100 points, so some of these questions are worth more. In fact, the last question is worth 8 points. So true and false, multiple choice, and short answer, similar to what we've done in the past reading quizzes. So in the midterm we did as well. So we'll talk more about that. I'll show you an example of that, but there's a downloadable document there. It's kind of a study guide with notes, so you can kind of take notes as you go along here. So if you do the homework and you do the kind of review, you should get a really good score. The only other things I want you to do this week, obviously, is we got a blog post. Now, we'll talk more about that as well, but along the way there's two videos I'd like you to watch. The Samsung apology, which I would say is a good example of how a corporation should apologize for a mistake. And then there is another video, a short video, that's tied to our blog post, number 7, The Apology Dilemma, in which we see some examples of really poor quality with regard to apologies to the public. So watch those. So 25 points generally this week is all we're asking for. Here is the study guide. I kind of took snapshots of each page. There's 3 pages. And like I said, it's not cumulative, so take a look at that. We're starting with this deconstructing conflicts. And I've taken the time to give you where things are located, where to study. So this is a pretty comprehensive little study guide I gave you guys here. So I would just go down the list here and check each off after you've reviewed these things and write some notes. Jot down some key phrases and notes and list some things and use that as your shorthand study guide. So here's obviously more examples of this. I'm not going to go through every single detail here. We have discussed all of these things already at some length. So let me know if you have any questions on the exam. Like I said, it's going to be, you'll have 60 minutes. And there'll be, maybe I'll give you 65 or 70 minutes, who knows. But somewhere around an hour you'll have to take this test. And let me know if you have any questions on that. Okay, so here is the thrust of this week, and it's kind of centered around this article here. And like I said, I want to pivot and go from thinking internally about how we apologize within our own milieus and move more broadly. Now, some of us might find ourselves working in situations where either you are impacted by a corporate situation where an apology is necessary. Maybe you're working in a situation where you're guiding folks, like some PR folks do here at the university, and who hope to do that kind of work. But either way, the corporate apology is an important sort of factor in a brand's trajectory. If it's done poorly, brands can suffer. And if it's done well, it can lead to greater growth overall. So it really is sort of a version of public relations. So read that article, I would say, and it is prescriptive in that it breaks down the who, where, what, when, and why of the situation at hand. And it gives good advice to corporations. So that is going to lead up to our blog post. So watch this short video on Samsung and also the worst apologies in business, which is only about 2.5 minutes. So not a lot of time there, but I'd like you to then pick one of these brands here, and then I'd like you to do a blog post. So here's the apology dilemma. That's what I'm calling this blog post. Due Thursday night by midnight. Here's where we're doing this now. This is where the graduate students maybe have to do a little bit more. Undergrads are required to write a 400 or 500 word post. Just generally discussing this, picking one of the companies, and then applying what you've learned through the article. Talk about how BP or Chevron or Paula Deen or Lululemon or Target might have handled things differently based on what you've read in the article. Graduate students are required to write a bit more. Okay, this is kind of your penance for being a graduate student, but I'd like you to go a little deeper here. You can go beyond the short video we watched there and do a little more digging. For example, you pick BP. What were some of the details behind that? And then really apply a little more thinking to this article and how you would write a prescription for the future for that brand based on what you know about the article. So you're basically providing apology advice for senior leadership to help the company brand save face moving to the next time. And by the way, like I said here, BP, in the case of BP and Chevron, there most definitely will be a next time. As we know, those are both related to environmental issues. So anyway, so that's it. Anybody has any questions, let me know too. But again, graduate students are on the hook for a little bit more of a depth in their responses. All students must supply 2 responses to 2 students, as we've done all semester. All right, one thing I just want to chat about quickly today here, just as the last sort of cherry on top of this section here, is just, sometimes we don't say things face to face. Sometimes we write an apology letter. And so I wanted to share that with you as well here. Here are some things, and this sort of dovetails off of what we've learned already about apologies. And there's 5 steps here in your letters when you have to write an apology letter. So here are some steps you take. All right, the first one here, say you're sorry, not so I'm sorry, but. Remember, there's no qualifiers here. It should just be I'm sorry. Plain old sorry is the first thing there, right? So if you got a but anywhere in there, get rid of the but. Number 2, own the mistake. It's important to show the wrong person that you're willing to take responsibility for your actions. So own it and truly own it. Sincerely own it. The third, describe what happened. The wrong person needs to know that you understand what happened and why it was hurtful to them. So it's not a bad thing to articulate that. I understand why you may feel the way you're feeling, and here's why I think you feel that way. So that will go a long way, frankly. Just letting them know you know what happened and how they might feel because of that. Number 4, again, have a plan. Let the wrong person know how you intend to fix the situation and admit that you were wrong. It takes a big person to own up to being wrong, as we all know. But you've already reminded them yourself that you're a big person. You've got this. So again, have a plan in place and be ready to execute against it. And then again, ask for forgiveness. The last one here. Being a little vulnerable at times. And I know we've talked about how people in business and generally men in business don't like to admit they're wrong or ask for forgiveness because they're afraid to put them in a one-down position. So we have to fight that, I think, really, in this day and age. And be able to show a little vulnerability and be willing to give up a little bit. You'll ultimately get a lot more as a result of that in the form of a good relationship. So here's an example of apology letter. I wanted to read this for you. Dear Dylan, I apologize for not arriving on time to pick you up from the airport yesterday afternoon. I have no excuse for keeping you waiting and wondering when your ride would show up. It's important to me not to let people down when they're depending on me. Next time, I'll make better use of calendar alerts, so I'll be sure to leave in plenty of time to arrive as scheduled or even ahead of schedule. I humbly ask for your forgiveness. I hope my mistake won't prevent you from seeking my help in the future. I'm always happy to be of service. All the best, Jillian. So again, not super long, but it does touch on all these bases here. So she says, I'm sorry. She owns a mistake, describes what happens, and she has a plan to fix that problem in the future. And then again, she's asking for forgiveness. So this is a good example of a letter from Jillian to Dylan using these 5 steps. All right, this element here, I'm not going to read this through. If you can stop the tape and read this if you wish. But another example of this again, right? A more professional version of this. So in this case, ABC Office Equipment. So if you want to read this through, feel free to do that. But again, it embodies what I would say here is the top 5 steps. Okay. So great book by Shakti Gawain, The Relationship Handbook. So I highly recommend that book if you're interested in learning more about this. The 2 powerful forgiveness exercises and the 1 core belief process exercise for healing are things we've done already. So a couple final thoughts I want to leave with you guys here. Forgiving and releasing others and yourself clears away internal emotional blocks to intimacy. And that's the assignment I had you guys do last week was meant and designed to help you lift some of that your baggage, as it were, by kind of forgiving yourself and forgiving others. Because my mom struggles with this a lot. She lives in the past a lot. My parents had a nasty divorce, and she just has carried this around with her like a hot coal in her chest for decades. And so, I've seen that kind of be debilitating for her in some ways, especially socially. So I would encourage you guys to do your best to kind of move on and try to close those chapters as positively as possible. And a lot of times, making an apology is the best way to do that, and just putting closure to things. Old hurts may hinder our ability to be open and vulnerable with our current partner. So regrets about how we have behaved in the past can make us feel unworthy of love. So again, it has a very cathartic effect if you're able to, forgive and forget. So check your baggage. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. I guess this is going to get a little spiritual here, but know that we all have a cross to bear in this world. We all have issues going on, and I think now we understand how much emotions trigger our behaviors, right? And maybe somebody's battling something you're not aware of. So, always try to be forgiving as much as possible, because at the end of the day, it doesn't do you any better to hold that anger any more than it does for the person to have your anger be projecting on them. So just know that some people are not capable of love, and it might be wise to let them go. So that's the other thing too. Be okay with closing out your relationship and moving on confidently. Just wish them well and take care of yourself. That's the thing. Now, I'll give you a quick story on that. I had a friend I've had for over 30 years, and we had some tough times over the last few years. And I realized after a while that, well, I should have realized it long earlier, but this person was not good for me emotionally or spiritually. And so I made a tough decision, and we've parted ways, and I haven't talked to him in, gosh, it's been 3 years now. But not an easy decision, because we had a history and a long time we spent together. But I knew it was best for both of us, frankly. It had become a toxic relationship. So if you've got a toxic relationship in your life, I would encourage you to kind of take stock in that. And I put things on a teeter-totter, generally speaking, the strengths and minuses of the relationship. And if you've got more minuses than positives, it may be time for you to let them go. So that's one piece of advice I want to give you guys. Don't be afraid to do that. Life's short, man. You got to get out there, and there's other people to meet too. And my final thought for you guys is, it's been my pleasure. Honestly, my only regret is I haven't got a chance to meet most of you face to face. I'm a much better teacher face to face, believe it or not. But it's been fun either way, and I've really enjoyed reading your posts. And thank you so much to all of you for sharing what you shared. I think it was really great, and a lot of great writing, really good class, generally speaking. And I wish you the best of luck in whatever you do. I hope that you'll learn some things here to help you navigate the travails of life, because there are certainly lots of pitfalls, ups and downs, and challenging people. But I think knowing yourself and being mindful, and that's kind of my message here, being mindful, slowing things down a bit, and paying attention in a particular way. In other words, watching your own reactions to things and how you're feeling, and maybe just at least acknowledging that you've got an emotional situation on your hands. And I think that's the first step, right? And remember, we talked about taking a beat and being mindful and staying present in the moment, and letting things kind of wash over you before you make a decision. Don't let that amygdala hijack your next response. So with that, I'll leave you guys. And again, I would say it's been a pleasure, because it has been a pleasure working with you guys, and I wish you the best of luck in your careers. And if you have any questions, or if you want to reach out to me professionally on LinkedIn, I'm out there as well. Happy to do that. I help students all the time in any way I can with regard to finding employment if you're on the cusp of graduation, or maybe professionally if you want to continue in different paths. Who knows, right? I think certainly never hurts to network with people you've met along the way. So Michael Bettker, you can find me there. I'm the only person with a picture of him and his dog on his LinkedIn profile. So I encourage you guys to join me there. And again, good luck with everything, and see you in the funny papers. Take care.